Today is Saturday, May 24th, 2025. I am the interviewer, Amy Moritz, and I'm with Ann Ridler Strong in the Lockport Public Library. Ann grew up in Lockport. She was a member of the swim team and cheerleading squads at Lockport Senior High School, graduating in 1975. She went to Niagara County Community College and then to SUNY Cortland, where she majored in physical education and swam on Cortland's women's swimming team. In 1983, she earned her master's degree in physical education from the University at Buffalo. In 1980, she was hired full-time in the Lockport School District and spent the majority of her career at the high school. She coached girls varsity soccer from 1979 to 1988 and worked numerous sporting events, including serving as the football scoreboard operator for 30 years, along with clock and scoreboard duties with girls soccer, lacrosse, volleyball, track and field, and swimming, and sounds like pretty much any sport that was going on and was around. So,
you have a scoreboard, I can run it.
And thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
So first, I know you grew up in Lockport. Tell me about a time that you remember falling in love with sports.
My parents were very athletic. They used to take us to the park when they played tennis, so we would be playing tennis on the courts near them. They would golf. They would take us out and let us hit balls on the golf course with them. We belonged to Briarwood swimming pool, so we swam there all summer. We played backyard, softball, wiffle ball, kickball. I had two brothers and a sister. My brothers weren't real athletic, but we used to play neighborhood games, and I've always loved sports.
What were so you had backyard opportunities and you were with your parents, but were there other opportunities for girls to play organized sports when you were growing up?
Not a lot. We had park softball in the summer. That was a lot of fun. We did that. I played for Willow Park, Ultro now. The Y swim team, which I was a member of for many years. But other than that, I don't recall too many other. I think Zwickers had a swim team also, but that was U.S. swimming, not Y swimming.
Right.
But there weren't a lot of organized activities for girls.
I was going to say, so swimming became it because that was what was available to you pretty much,
I mean,
right?
the Keenan Center was built sometime in the maybe 60s or 70s, and they did have ice skating. We used to go to the park and ice skate and go to Keenan and ice skate, but it was nothing real organized.
Uh-huh. So in high school, so you were both a swimmer and a cheerleader.
Right.
So you had been, with the Y, you were competitive swimming with the Y?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
What were your, did you have specialties?
Anything but the backstroke, pretty much. I was not a good backstroker. Swam IM, freestyle, breaststroke, mostly freestyle.
So when you get to the high school, I was looking through yearbooks, so I could be wrong, right? But it seemed like about the time you were joining was about the time that they just started having a girls' swim team. What do you remember about that?
Well, we wanted to swim when we were in 8th or 9th grade, but they wouldn't let us because at that time it was at Emmett Belknap and North Park, where 7 through 9. High school was 10, 12. You had to be in the high school to swim, which is much different now. There was no JV team. And it was mostly the girls from the Y swim team that were swimming on the team. But it was relatively new. Our events, we swam 25s, one length of the pool. And then I think we did have maybe the 50 free and the 100 IM, but the events were kind of like an 8 and under swimming now, what the kids swim now.
Wow.
Then I got to college and they were all 100s and 200s, and that was quite a shock.
That's quite a difference. And the boys at the time were swimming 100s and 200s, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, they were swimming. I'm not sure about the 2 or the 500, but they definitely had longer distances than we did.
Mm-hmm. Did you have co-ed swim practices, or were you separate?
No, they were separate.
They were separate?
At the Y, the boys would swim first and the girls would swim the next session, and then it would flip on Fridays. But at the high school, we swam in the spring, and the boys swam in the winter.
Okay.
And now the girls swim in the fall.
Okay, so you just had completely, different.
It was just the girls, yes.
Different seasons.
Yeah.
Aside from the distances that you were swimming, which that's interesting. Reminds me of track and field too, and track and not having to run distances. Were there? Did you guys have to fight for anything? Were there any comparisons with what the guys were getting? Or
not at that point, because you had to buy your own suit anyway, and there really wasn't much with swimming. We didn't even have goggles, I don't think, until I was later swimming. Usually when I was younger, we didn't have goggles. And when they first came out, they said you couldn't dive in the pool with them. that they would pop your eyes out. So things have definitely changed in the last 50, 55 years.
Yeah, a little bit different.
Just a little.
One other like interesting, again, I was like looking through yearbooks, and I was surprised to see that Lockport had a long history of synchronized swimming at
Yes.
the high school.
Yeah.
Which put on it wasn't competitive, not like
No.
you would see now in the Olympics, but they would put on shows.
Yes.
That do you remember just being around that time? Like
That was going on when I was there. I was never involved in it,
right.
but I used to go to the shows.
Were there a lot of was that
Oh, it was
popular
a
with other
big,
girls?
yes, it was a big, yeah. Because I even think the junior high kids could do it too. So there was a lot of kids that were involved in it.
Okay.
And they did have a few boys. I do remember that.
I did see
There were
a couple
few.
of pictures. I'm like, there were a couple guys in there.
Couple guys.
Yeah. And you also were a cheerleader.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Well, in the fall, there was no girls' sports.
Right.
So it was either cheerleading or nothing. It was pretty competitive. I mean, it certainly wasn't the gymnastic stunts and things they do now, the dancing. It was more yelling and jumping up and down and that kind of thing. It was more cheerleading.
Right. But it was a way to be involved in sports, right?
Right. We cheered for football, who was awful at that time, and basketball. And we did have good basketball teams. So that was fun to do with it. And they did have JV and varsity for that.
Okay. So, yeah. So you could do that. Were there, what was because the attitudes have changed towards cheerleaders.
Yes.
It ebbed and flowed all over
Yes,
the
it
place,
has.
right? So, but when you were cheerleading, what was the attitude, I guess, prevailing around cheerleaders?
I think people may have looked up to us. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't just popularity, but I think it was it was viewed as being the popular girls on the the cheerleading team. But I didn't really feel that way. I mean, I just felt like it was something I wanted to do. And we had great fans for basketball. They were called Terrible Tighties. No, that's not what no, we were the Army, because our basketball team was really good, and they would go to all the games, and they would make so much noise. And they did some of the inappropriate chants and things like that. But it was fun.
All that good time in high
All the
school,
good time.
right? Yes. And so, obviously, you were in swimming. You loved sports. You were athletic. What was that like? I guess at the time, like you mentioned, like cheerleaders were just in general were popular kids at school, but were female athletes or girls who like sports, like how were they kind of viewed? How do you think you were viewed?
Yeah, I think now if you do gymnastics or dancing, you definitely have a better shot at being on a cheerleading team. Back then, it was anybody that, I mean, you had to do jumps, but they certainly weren't difficult jumps, and be able to yell and be coordinated with the other girls. I mean, it wasn't
right
specialized as it is now.
Yeah. And for like so you were swimming. I think that was basketball around at that time.
Basketball was
as
in the
well?
fall. Girls basketball had started by then.
Okay.
But I was not good at basketball.
That was not.
I'd
your
rather
sport.
watch than play.
So so then the girls who played basketball and the girls who swam, so we're kind of starting to do the more traditional sports.
Right.
How was that? How do you feel like that was viewed generally by like the student population or the school? Like,
I mean, there was the jocks and the nerds and just like it is anywhere else. It's like the kids in band and the musical kids, and then your jocks, and then your smart kids. But I didn't really feel it was too separated like that when I was in school. But I may have been.
when you look back at it now, it doesn't feel that way.
No,
right?
it doesn't.
Yeah. So tell me about deciding that you wanted to go, or when did you decide you wanted to go into physical education?
Probably around second grade.
Okay.
I had Mr. Enzina and Mrs. Tennyson were the phys ed teachers at the time over at Roby Kelly, and I just fell in love with what they were doing, and that was what I always wanted to do, so that's what I did.
And so you go to N-Trip for 2 years,
Yes.
right? And then tell me about going to Cortland.
Cortland was a good physical education school, that in Brockport. I didn't want to go to Brockport just because it was closer to home. I was a little bit older. Like right out of high school, I wasn't ready to go away. So 2 years later, going to Cortland, not that it's that far away, but it was far enough away that I couldn't just run home to mom and dad if something happened. So I had a great time at Cortland. It's a beautiful campus. Joined the swim team, had a great time there, had 2 different coaches the 2 years I swam there. We went to nationals one year on a relay, which was really neat. It was NCAA Division III nationals. I think we finished like 25th, but we went, so that was neat.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the swimming at Cortland, and obviously the distances were a little bit different.
The distances were much greater.
Was there a difference too in practice or training?
Oh, yes.
Tell me about what the difference was then.
At the Y, the pool was the 20-yard, 4-lane, and there were probably 80 or 100 girls on the team. So you just moved as fast as your lane went. High school, bigger pool, less kids. Practices were a little more difficult. But then in college, we did yards after yards after yards, miles in practice every day. And it was a lot tougher, but it made me faster, so
Got you to that.
Definitely a different competitive nature.
Mm-hmm. And that experience going to D3 Nationals, that had to be just, regardless of how you finish, right? Just exciting to qualify and
to be there and see the competition. It was amazing to see the other kids swim. Mm-hmm. It was neat.
That was part of a relay, so obviously relay is like part of a team, but what's the dynamic for you that you notice like on a swim team, because it's a team but it's individual, right? It's you. So what was that dynamic for you like?
There were always kids that were better, especially at Cortland. I was usually the second or third on my team in the event, so they would put me in different events depending on where we might need points. But yeah, you were still a team, and you always cheered for everybody else, and I don't know, it was just part of a team.
Are there things that we always talk about, the things that you learn being on a team and playing sports that then translate into other areas of life? Did you notice other things that like from swimming or even from cheering or just being part of a team that translate?
The teamwork, the cooperation, getting along with people. You may not agree, but you still have to figure out a way to get along. Hard work. Everything was hard work. If you didn't work hard, you weren't going to be on that relay. You weren't going to be into that event. You would swim whatever the coach wanted to throw you in. So, there was a lot of things you learn being a part of a team, just that family feeling.
So I want to ask you about coaching, coming back to Lockport, but first I want to ask you a bit about physical education. And what that was like when you started teaching. Was there a philosophy for girls in physical education? This is the time where we still, Title IX's kind of new. We're coming out of an AIAW model that was very participation heavy. So that's what I've book learned. So but I want to hear your experience from that.
Well, when I first started teaching, I taught at Anna Merritt Elementary School, and the classes were co-ed because that's how they came in. So it really wasn't much different there. Once I went to the high school, we did offer co-ed. Some activities were co-ed that we would let the kids pick if they want to do an all-girls volleyball team or practice or go to co-ed swimming or co-ed cross-country skiing, or, and then the boys would have one thing for the boys, because some kids just didn't like co-ed. So that was a little bit different. Then at times we went to all-girls classes and all-boys classes. So, we've run the gamut of things, but we try and offer the girls the same opportunities the boys have. So if the boys did a handball unit, we did a handball unit. If the boys did volleyball, we did volleyball. If, we all swam. We were doing individual sports, team sports, the weight room, and swimming. And we would rotate through that twice a year. So, there were a lot of different ways we did it. I'm not sure which was the best. It was nice for the kids to have a choice, but it didn't always seem fair to the girls that didn't want to do some of the harder things, or the boys that were not athletic didn't want to do co-ed because they didn't want to be looked down upon by the other kids. So it was kind of tough. It still is that way. Some kids just aren't athletic, and that's fine. Not everybody can play an instrument. Not everybody's good at math. You try and encourage the kids to just do the best they can. And
is it finding a balance too between, like, not everyone's athletic, but everyone can be active.
Right.
Right. And so it's that, and
Right.
finding that, but like not every, I think we think athletics and we think competitive
Right.
immediately, and that's not necessarily always the case.
Yeah, and when I retired, well, I've been out 8 years now, they were going more toward the lifetime activities. Swimming is one, tennis, badminton, walking. Now pickleball is a big one that we had played. The kids really liked that. Just trying to get them to stay active. And we used to walk, and people were like, oh, that's not doing it. But if you got the kids in and got them walking, and they could walk faster, and I would say, look, my 95-year-old mother walks faster than you do. Let's go, pick it up. And, they would laugh, but they would. But everybody can walk. So we tried to get them to do something. I hope I got kids to do things.
I'm sure that you did. You got them moving.
I tried.
Sometimes out of their comfort zone.
Yes.
Which is hard with that age
High
group.
school age,
anyway.
yes, it's hard.
Yeah. So when you were coaching, so you started coaching varsity soccer in '79,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me when you came in, tell me what that program was like and what it was like taking that over.
Well, at the time, there were no JV teams. The coach, the actual teaching position that I got, the teacher was coaching soccer and he left. So I kind of inherited that with the teaching. I think I had like 24 girls on the team just so we could have enough kids and try and develop the kids, because soccer wasn't a real big program. There were a couple kids who were very good and had played. Some of the kids just did something in the fall to stay in shape for basketball or get in shape for basketball. That was not their first love, but they did it just to get the running and get the conditioning. So it was different because kids came in with not a lot of skill, and I had never played soccer, so it was a learning for all of us. Max Lederer was the athletic director at the time, and he was very helpful. Dennis Cassidy was coaching the boys, and he was very helpful, trying to help me, give me tips on drills and things like that. And I had taken enough coaching classes or classes at Cortland that I could figure out how to run a practice, and read enough books that I could see which drills would work. And we made it through.
Was there a point that you then got a JV team?
Yes. I can't remember. I think it was near the. It had to be at least 4 or 5 years in before we got a JV team, and then I could take a few less kids.
Right.
So it wasn't quite so cumbersome.
And so what? So it sounds like at that time, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so it sounds like your athletic director and the boys coach, right? Like that the men around were very helpful in trying to help you
Yes.
build it, because you can't just all of a sudden say, and now we're going to have this huge girls athletic program. It needs to kind of be built. And so did you feel like that? Like they were trying to help and build it?
The athletic directors I had, Max Lederer, Bob Ames, Pat Burke, Todd Suchlak, were all very helpful. They would do anything they could to help you get answers to a question, find out, get fields, set up games, do all that stuff. They were very encouraging and very helpful.
So over your 10 years, what did you see change? How did you see let's just girl soccer as you were coaching that. How did you see that grow?
Well, I think around that time, the Keenan Center may have started their soccer program, and having the JV team definitely helped develop players so that when they came up to varsity, they were more skilled than my original teams, and they worked hard, and there were more kids that played soccer, so that definitely helped evolve the game.
For sure. So there were, along with getting that JV team, there were more opportunities in the community to play and learn soccer. Mm-hmm. So like when you first started, were there girls coming out for soccer that had never really played soccer before?
I think I had a couple.
Uh-huh.
And I kept kids if they wanted to play. And the interest was there and I had room. I kept the kids that wanted to stay. Uh-huh. So it worked. I mean, they had opportunity that they may not have had 10 years later.
Right. I was going to ask you about how things evolved, and while you may not have been coaching, you certainly were all around. Mm-hmm. From being a phys ed teacher to also just being involved in the athletic program. How did the opportunities for girls or the competition for girls, how did that evolve and change in your time?
a lot more sports were added. When I was in school, swimming, basketball, and softball. And softball and swimming were the same season. So that made no sense. Shortly after I got out, the year after or 2 years, they switched girls swimming to the fall, where it is now. But in the fall, there's so many sports for girls. And then in the winter, there's a few, and then in the spring, there's less. It just, it makes kids make a decision, because you get kids playing different sports, and they fall in the same season. So for good or bad, I don't know. It just makes kids choose which sport they want to go to.
Right.
If they're multi-sport athlete.
Did you also see, like you mentioned, there were probably girls when you first started that had an opportunity to play that maybe 10, 15 years later wouldn't have, because there's more opportunities for girls to
Right.
learn and play. Is that, I don't want to say negative, I won't put anything, but it seems like great for participation, and then as we get better and more opportunities, then sometimes the opportunities for girls to participate get that competitive aspect of it. There's a balance there.
Yes. And the younger kids, I know my kids played, my daughters played, my son also too, played travel soccer for a few years. And those kids, as they got older, would weed themselves out, or lost interest, or didn't want to do that sport anymore. Whether it was burnout, my kids swam competitively for years. They just get sick of doing the same thing day after day, year after year. So they kind of weed themselves out, find other interests. It's just natural way of finding out, I guess. But they have an opportunity when they're younger. And now with my grandson playing baseball, you can see there's some kids that just aren't very talented, and it's their first time. But you see them improve. Whether they'll come back next year or not, I don't know. But at least they're having the opportunity to try many different things, whereas we really didn't have that opportunity to try different things.
You just had a handful in the backyard,
Right.
between those two.
Who we could play with fine in the park.
Would come up. I wondered if you have any thoughts about there are statistics about girls when they're maybe 13, 14 that they play sports, and then that's the time where you lose them from sports. And you were in the high school, so you were maybe a little bit older.
Yeah,
but did you see where you kind of lost some girls, or do you have any thoughts about why sometimes those girls end up leaving sport?
I think some of them just feel they're not good enough. Some may not like the uniforms. The swim team, we wore bathing suits. You have to be comfortable in a bathing suit, obviously. Volleyball, they wear those real tight shorts. And that's about the age that self-image really plays a part. If they don't like the uniform, they don't like the coach. I think a lot of it's they don't like the coach. They don't like somebody else on the team. They just don't want to put themselves in that position to have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. You kind of already answered this, but I just want to ask you about the support that you got from administration, and the support that you saw other girls' teams get from administration. Even from your time when you were an athlete, when you were swimming, did you feel that there was support there for girls who wanted to play sport?
Yeah, I think we were encouraged to do it, and they did support us when we were out. They would ask us, you need anything? They would ask the coach, not the kids, do you need anything? And they just seemed to be very supportive of not just the girls' sports, but all the sports.
Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned your athletic directors, but it
Right.
seemed like there was really good support.
Yes.
And I've heard that from a few people from Lockport, that
Right.
the girls' teams really did have good support.
Yes. Yeah, Max was a great athletic director. He really was.
When you think about Title IX, what does that mean to you? And how did that maybe play into anything in your career?
Well, I definitely think it opened some doors, not so much for me, but for the people behind me. There was an explosion of sports that came out after. I know volleyball started shortly after I graduated. Track and field started for girls. And over the years, they've involved tennis and volleyball and all kinds of sports, and now lacrosse and ice hockey. They've really come a long way with promoting girls' sports. I see there's girls wrestling now, and girls can play golf, which they always could. I remember before the girls had a swim team, there was a girl that dove on the boys' team, but it was a non-competitive, a non-contact sport, and she did compete with the boys, but that was before the girls had a team. So now, that wouldn't happen now.
Right, yeah.
But
so just more like that, more opportunity.
More opportunities, more, like when I was coaching, my first few years coaching, we shared the uniforms with the girls' basketball team. They had one set of uniforms that the kids wore for years, and they were that nylon, scratchy, itchy with the Peter Pan collar. Oh my God, they were funny. We finally got new uniforms, and the girls were much happier not having to share the uniforms, and basketball got their own uniforms, and the money started, becoming a little more evenly distributed throughout.
Do you think that Title IX played a factor in being able to, it sounds like they were creating some opportunities, but things like not sharing uniforms and getting some new uniforms and
I think
just
so.
Opening that money up a little bit?
I think it did. Mm-hmm. I couldn't say for sure, but that's my feeling.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Do you have a favorite or a few favorite memories of coaching or being around athletics at Lockport?
My whole career was fun. I really enjoyed teaching. Wow. Just when I see kids now and they remember me, I must have made an impression. Oh, they'll look at me and say, "Do you remember me?" And I'm like, "Well, the face is familiar, but the name kind of escapes me." But there's kids that just you remember for whatever reason, and I just hope I made them not hate phys ed. I understood kids didn't always like it, didn't appreciate it, but I tried to explain to them, you have to pass this in order to graduate, and it's up to you. I'm not going to force you, but try, do your best. If you can't do it, as long as you're trying, that's all I care. Mm-hmm. With the coaching, just the rapport with the kids, it's a little more intimate than just teaching them every day, or high school we saw them 2 or 3 times a week, so I didn't see them every day other than practice. So you get to know the kids a little bit better, which I suppose could be good or bad. Now it's probably frowned upon to get close to your kids, but I had some really good friends of kids. When I started coaching, I was only 5 or 6 years older than they were, so it was different, but it was fun.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. I was asking, Julie Quokka about that, because it was the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, she actually coached her sisters.
Yes.
So you're not that much older. And so what was that like to have to come back with kids that were not far from being your peers?
Yeah, and I did coach a couple of my cousins. And actually my brother-in-law's sister, who wasn't my brother-in-law at the time, but I coached her. It was kind of hard, because you had to distance yourself somewhat. Obviously, being 6 years older, you are a little more mature. You've got the college experience. I was teaching, so you had to have your professional boundaries. And the kids understood that. But, my kids growing up, my daughter was dating a teacher, and he was very nervous that my kids were going to, embarrass him at school. And I'm like, look, I'm a teacher. They've got cousins that are teachers, aunts that are teachers. They're not going to say anything. They know that school is school, home is home. So I tried to, instill that in the kids, that I can be your friend, but I'm still in charge.
And it seemed to go pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah.
What were those during your 10 years? What were those teams like? And you mentioned you ended up getting a JV team, and you end up getting like more girls who had played more before coming in. So what were practices? What were games? What was that competition? Just, not specifically, but generally like. Do you remember about that?
It definitely got more competitive as we went on. The girls were more skilled. So were the other teams. The NFL was a tough league. Lewiston Porter had a pioneer program that had been going on for years. So they were always a perennial. Probably one of the highlights was we beat them 1-0 on our own field one year. And it was one of my midfielders took a shot from midfield, and their goalie had come up and it bounced over her head, and we won the game. So that was exciting. That didn't happen very often. And one year we did go to, they didn't have sectionals, but they did have the Far West Regionals, and we did play a Rochester team. So we were actually the class, whatever, no, they did have sectionals, but all the ECIC and all those teams played in the spring, so they weren't in it. So we were automatically the sectional champions, and we played a team from Rochester and lost in that round. But that was interesting to be able to go on.
Right.
But now they've got soccer in the fall, so.
That's interesting that they had Section 6 girls soccer, but that it wasn't uniform, right? That
Right.
It was,
Well, and like now, with girls swimming, the girls swim in the fall in the state. The Niagara Orleans League here that Newfane's in, and the Genesee region from like Orleans County or that Rochester area, they swim in the winter with the boys. They do co-ed, so they don't have sectionals or states for those girls.
that's really interesting. What do you think about that?
Well, my kids went to Newfane, so.
Okay.
And my daughters never got the chance to swim sectionals or states, but small schools, there's so many sports in each, they've only got so many kids.
Right.
They had plenty of opportunity. A couple of my daughters never played softball, and they played JV softball because of the numbers. In a small school like that, if you put too many sports in the same season, you run out of kids. I think they're finding that now with boys, with football and soccer in the fall down there, and cross country and golf. Or they golf in the spring, I think, down there. I don't know where they golf, but it's just too many activities, and the kids, there's not enough kids.
It's hard to create more opportunities when you're at a small school and you just don't have the numbers to support all of that.
Because some of the schools, Barker and Royhart, combined for football, and some of the others, you need more kids. And I know Barker's swim team joined Royhart's swim team because my daughter was coaching there, and they only had, I think she had like 11 kids total, and that's boys and girls, so that's not enough.
No, that's makes it really challenging.
It is very
to do
challenging.
that. Yes,
because you can't even get kids in every event.
and that's doesn't give a great opportunity for those. I mean, you try to give the best opportunity to the kids who are there.
Right.
But
I mean, they can swim. Maybe they get wide open what they want to swim, but they don't win meets because they don't have enough numbers to fill in the lanes to score points.
I want to ask you one more question about swimming. I know that was kind of what was most available to you, right? But was there something about swimming that you still loved, that drew you in, or was it just because it was like, this was what I could do and I'm athletic and so that's what I do it? Or is there something that you liked about being in the pool?
I just liked being in the pool and swimming, and just that feeling of accomplishment. And it served me well. I got my lifeguarding. I'm still lifeguarding 50 years later. So it did have opportunities for other employment.
For other, yeah. It opened up other opportunities for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So last question, is there something that you would want, like younger generations, girls who are in high school now, who have all these opportunities, to kind of maybe know about the history of women's sports, or what their opportunities were maybe built on?
Just to realize how lucky they are to have as many choices as they do. And it used to bother me when I was at the high school and kids would say, well, I'm not going to swim this year, I'm going to get a job. You've got the rest of your life to work. If you can do a team or be in the musical or stay in band through high school, if you can, do it. Not everyone's parents probably can afford for the kids not to help out or get money for themselves, but they miss that opportunity to make lasting memories with their friends. And you look back at high school, and I wouldn't want to do it again by any stretch of the imagination. Once was enough, but I don't think I'd change anything. My parents didn't make us work. I mean, we could get a job in the summer. My brothers were paper boys, but just missing out on all the opportunities of the fun things you do in high school that you'll never get back. You never get that opportunity again.
Well, Anne, thank you so much.
Oh, this has been fun.
I really enjoyed it. This has been great.
It has been.